When I was doing my MA, the teachers had autonomy to um, offer courses. All they had to do was prepare a course curriculum, get it approved by the appropriate body, which is usually called a board of studies. And if that was approved, then a teacher could offer that course. Usually, it would be in the list of optionals, because compulsory courses are the ones that are considered to be those which everybody has to do. So, uh, one could design one's own optionals, and you could offer those optionals to students, and that was okay. And even in the regular, if you go into the um, regular courses, um, teachers decided uh, what to give as, uh, because in these universities, you have the same teacher who teaches you, evaluating even your end semester exam scripts. The same teacher sets the question paper and evaluates the scripts. So they also had great latitude in terms of deciding what kind of midterm sessionals that one could be given. And I remember with Professor Balveer Arora, I chose to do a semester project, which means that I had to give him a topic at the beginning of the semester and submit uh, what I had researched on. Okay, what I had researched on throughout the semester. Towards the end of the semester, I had to submit that, and some people could just do term papers if they wanted, not do this kind of a project. And I did the project, and apparently I did it quite well, because Balveer Arora not only lavished praise on it in the class, but he even showed it to the juniors and others for see how you can do a good a semester project. That is that kind of latitude can be there, but you can't have that kind of latitude in Osmania University for one simple reason, uh, and that is that this course is being offered in 4 different colleges. And if you tell people, teachers, you devise your own way of assessing students, then that would not be something which is very fair, because different people will be evaluated differently by different teachers. Some might be a little strict, and some might be a little, or a very, very, what should I say, liberal in their doling out of marks. I've always had to face the bad end of the stick with students complaining that I'm miserly with marks. I used to tell them that I'm not a miser. Um, please ask teachers who have lavished you with generous marks. Please ask them to give you 5 rupees for every mark they have given. 5 rupees for every mark they have given. And then you'll know who's a miser and who's not. Because marks is a meaningless transaction. It's a meaningless transaction. I give you, how many marks do you want? You want 98 out of 100? Take it. So you go out into the world armed with this marks memorandum, which says that you have got an outstanding grade. I know one Reddy teacher who gave an outstanding grade to a Reddy student because they were both from the same district and from neighboring villages. And this fellow walked as if he was the king of the earth. And that was 10 years ago. And today he is unemployed, he's unemployable, and all that has come out of this generosity in giving marks which are converted into grades. That is not the way to evaluate, but anyway, um, so if you look at that, if you basically look at that, then you're raising the expectations of your prospective employers. You're raising the expectations when somebody sees that you have 84% and 86% and 90%, and then they'll say this person must be brilliant. And when you face the interviews, or when you face or you take written exams, because some of these jobs ask you to write also. Like, for example, if you want to get into Google, you first have to pass a writing test. Okay, they'll see your writing skills. So you submit this wonderful memorandum of marks, which shows you having a certain percentage. And at the end of it, when you're asked to write, you can't write. Or if questions are asked, you can't answer. So what are you doing? Not you. What are the teachers doing? Tarnishing the reputation of Osmania University. That's what they're doing. There are, I don't want to name companies, but there are companies in Hyderabad that will not touch students from Osmania University. They will not touch students from Osmania University. If you send the applications, that's it. You don't hear from them. So, apart from achieving these kind of wonderful results and several other idiotic things, um, marks and all don't serve a purpose. If I tell you stories nicely and ask you questions about who does what in which class, and anyway, let it be. Why talk about things which are useless? Uh, right. Yesterday I had raised a few questions. Do you remember any of them? Hmm?
Yes, sir.
Hmm. What about Akshay Garu?
I remembered some and I forgot some, sir.
Why like that? What is this partiality to some and this dislike for others? Because today some new people have come. I'm not going to write those like I did yesterday, but this is Jeremy Waldron's criticism.
Sir, we don't find anything from about him in net.
Mm, that is sad. He's a relatively unknown man because he says things which are not convenient to people. That is a problem. Mm, that is a problem. This my dogs are becoming too demanding. I have to pet them while I'm teaching. Okay, so Jeremy Waldron's criticism of communitarianism, which is the forerunner of um, multiculturalism, and who are his targets? His main targets are Alistair Charles Taylor, and Michael Sandel, and Michael Walzer mainly, but Will Kimlicka as well. I feel a little sad that his targets are Alistair McIntyre and Charles Taylor, because I really believed at one time, and I still do. I still do. Um, that these are amazing scholars, men of great intellect, especially Taylor, uh, maybe Alistair McIntyre also. Uh, my this thing was the charm of these. I met them at a very impressionable age when I was just 20 and I was doing my MA. Uh, I met these gentlemen along with David McClellan, who's written a pretty good book on Marx. So, so you see, for a 20-year-old, meeting names whom you have studied, seeing them in person in itself is an awe-inspiring thing. And when you add to that the fact that you actually had a conversation with them, then they become your real heroes. You know, their qualities such as humility and all those, when they come out into the open, they really become your heroes. So it happened like that with McIntyre, Taylor, McClellan, and later on, around 25, when I had just about started teaching, I again had had the chance to run into Charles Taylor, and he recognized me, which was like, okay, I went straight to heaven for a few minutes. And I met Noam Chomsky. Uh, so meeting people at a young age, people whom you've studied, when you meet them, that impact is something else. I mean, come on, these are world famous scholars. They are known everywhere. They're known everywhere. And Lister McIntyre's essay was one of the inspirations for my MPhil. So yeah, so I feel a little sad, and the sadness is increased by the fact that uh, Waldron's criticism of these people is very, very valid. That makes it a little more sadder to accept. I'm not going to type the questions today. I am just only going to talk about those questions that Waldron raised. And what I have done is that uh, I think I raised 10 questions. I put these 10 questions, some of which are supposedly against McIntyre, some against Sandel. But since he talks about all these people in one particular breath, uh, to make things easy for you, I can understand the difficulty of being initiated into this kind of a thing with the kind of training that you have had at the BA level. Um, I can absolutely understand uh, the source of your various anxieties, one of which is the exam anxiety. And though Madam Padma denies it. I'm pretty sure it is one of her source of exam anxieties, um, and as she admits to, um, it's also a source of, oh my God, there is so much, and I don't know this. So don't let this don't let this cause an anxiety. However many months has it been since you met me? We started our classes, if I'm not mistaken, on 6th April, and then on 5th May we went into vacation, and then we just came back. And you've been doing several things, and already you are there is a fault of mine that I admit to, uh, which I now realize I should have done something to put you at ease. At the beginning itself, I should have told you that I have a tendency to teach these dense topics, and that they cannot be simplified beyond a certain um, level. The example that I keep giving everyone is, if you want a sugar solution and you find it too sweet, then you can add a little water to lessen the sweetness of that sugar solution. But if I add a drum of water, then that's no longer sugar solution. The sugar solution has got lost somewhere in that drum of water. So I should have probably, as it is called in diplomatic parlance, I should probably have undertaken some confident building measures, or CBMs as they are called. My uh, military style bash on regardless seems to have created a few problems for you, and I'll take the responsibility for them. I'll take the responsibility for them, but I uh, sincerely hope that you're feeling at least a wee bit more comfortable in my classes now. I,
Yes, sir.
yeah,
It's not the fault of yours, sir. It's like how we studied.
no,
You were not
no,
equipped enough
no, that is
previously.
true. But I understand the system.
Hmm.
I understand the system. So, as somebody who is not going to be following that kind of a system, it is my responsibility to address myself to your concerns which might arise. I should have anticipated them. And they have been worsened by the fact that I don't get to see you because of this online teaching. In the previous years, since I used to see people's faces, um, it was a lot more obvious to me when somebody was in discomfiture. So I could easily understand immediately that oh, there's something wrong going on here. And so if uh, if you're looking at that, yes, my fault. I take responsibility for it. I take responsibility for it, but hopefully, if you're regular, then this will go away. The problem will go away if you're regular.
Yes, sir.
The more irregular you are, the bigger the problem is. And for the perennial absentees, the problem is not at all a problem. It's like you've given up already, and there's not much anyone can do about that, is there? So, anyway, so I should be a little more careful. And I really want to tell you people, I asked you to come to class today, made a specific request after speaking to uh, Professor Ganesh, the principal, and telling him the state of affairs. And he was a bit stunned. He didn't realize what was happening. And when I told him that as early as May, people were wanting to write, were asked to write their assignments, and some were asking for a 20-page assignment, 25-page assignment for something which is for 5 marks. So that came as a shock to him. So that's probably the reason why he reacted immediately. I was telling you, if you remember, we are still in the first unit, and how can we talk about um, how can we talk about what are you going to write your assignment on? And in the past, I have had people giving me an assignment on Karl Marx, who's not even in the syllabus, is not even in the syllabus. So how can you write an assignment about somebody who's in next semester's syllabus? So, I mean, you can't reduce things to such a level of farce. Anyway, so that apart, so let's get on with the understanding of the criticism of communitarianism, which is often considered, and rightly so, to be the precursor for multiculturalism. I must tell you, however, that Charles Taylor, despite his communitarian leanings, he is somebody who questions multiculturalism, especially of the Kimlika variety. He actually raised a number of questions in a seminar that I attended. Uh, he raised a lot of questions about Kimlika. So don't club them all together. It is just for convenience and to try and keep things a little simple. Otherwise, I'll have to tell you this is at Sandel, this is at McIntyre, this is aimed at Taylor, this is aimed at Walzer, all that, which means then I'll have to teach Michael Walzer, I'll have to teach Michael Sandel, I'll have to teach Charles Taylor, which I have, but I didn't teach you Alasdair McIntyre, and I will be teaching you William Lika as soon as I'm done with Jeremy Waldron. Okay, so what is it that Waldron is complaining about? Um, so I had put these in the form of questions, the concerns that Jeremy Waldron um, basically, the ones that he picks up. Uh, Waldron is first and foremost concerned about liberalism. This is the first thing you remember. I don't know if I said this yesterday. He's talking about liberalism, and he's talking about the value of liberalism in terms of promoting the four F's. You can forget the free market, but free thinking, freedom of speech, and free will. Those are very important, uh, irrespective of the fact that you are somebody who likes liberalism or dislikes liberalism. There's no way you can deny that these are very, very important determinants of our life. Okay, they are absolutely important determinants of our lives. So there's no getting away from that. So you have to relate these to liberalism, and since it promotes individualism, it is in that context that we talk about the individual and the community. Okay, because the underlying assumption of all these philosophers, leave Kimlika out for a moment, the other four philosophers, is that the communitarian version of liberalism can be as effective as uh, the individualist version. That is the underlying assumption, though it may not be stated uh, in as many words. So, the question then, the first one that we ask ourselves, is the individual a creation of a community? And I told you the answer to this is absolutely not. You, there might be some individuals who are willing to follow the rules of the community to which they belong. Uh, but do you also um, extend this to everyone? Those who are not happy. I told you that first and foremost, please understand that the notion of the community itself is a fluidic notion. It's fluidic because values of a community change. Let me give you a very simple example. At one time, there was this fight between Vaishnavites and Shaivites as to who's the main deity of Hinduism. Nowadays, that seems to have been resolved. People seem to be now veering around to the view that whether it is Vishnu or it is Shankara, these are just names that we are giving. You can't have uh, so many gods creating one universe. You can't have that, right? So, given that kind of given that kind of an understanding, so there is a fluidity. In the Vaishnavites, there was a time when people quarreled about what kind of namam you put on your face. The Vaishnavites, some of them believe in the you namam. Uh, the Alvars, they believe in the Vainamam. So, if you look at any photograph depicting Lord Venkateshwara, what do you see? You see a Vainamam. And nobody today quarrels about that. In the past, they did quarrel about these things. So, a community which was once fragmented around various lines seems to have turned around, and with the passage of time, it seems to have consolidated into a better philosophical understanding. Uh, so, who's doing this? Who's doing this? Is the community somehow changing itself? How can it change itself? Okay, without active members, a community is an inert body. It's inert, it doesn't move. All movement of a community, and I'm talking about thought, mental processes, are initiated by the members of the community. And I remember there was one particular meeting held right where I live, very close to where I live, where representatives of Shaivism, representatives of Vaishnavism, Advaitins and Dvaitins and Visishtadvaitins were all brought onto one platform. They were all brought onto one platform, and ultimately, the conclusion that they came to was that if you take the attainment of grace, if you take that as the breaking of the cycle of life and death and rebirth and death, uh, then there can be many roads to it. There doesn't, like, you can choose a destination. Even Google Maps will tell you don't take this road, uh, there's traffic ahead or whatever. So take another road. So it suggests another road. So communities don't live, they are not, they are not things which are solid. They are cast in metal and their form doesn't change. It isn't so. It isn't so at all. So an individual is not necessarily a creation of a community. In fact, individuals who militate against a community are the ones who contribute to the change in the attitudes of the community itself. I can give you a number of examples, but it'll be wasting a lot of your time. Guru Nanak changed a number of things. Uh, One of the amazing people. Then uh, Guru Raghavan, could you mute, please? Thank you. Yeah. So Guru Raghavendra changed a number of things. He said there's no need to wear a sacred thread. There's no need to wear a sacred thread. He never wore it. So, well, people have contributed to change in communities. Uh, there have been leaders, and the leaders are the ones who usually are the ones who defy the existing rules, and that is how they become leaders. the ones who defy the existing rules. No leader becomes a leader unless you're being nominated as a successor to someone. You will not become a leader by conforming. You become a true leader by defying existing rules. So that is one thing that you have to remember. So the individual is not a creation of a community. Okay, he's not a creation of a community. Does an individual uh, owe his or her identity to the community one has been brought up in? I don't think so. Again, I don't think so. People forge their own identities, and I keep telling you that it's we don't have one identity, and we are not members of one community. If you ask me, I am a member of different communities because of who I am. Uh, I am a part of the teaching community. I am a part of the university community, Usmania University community. I am a part of the political science teaching community. At another level, I am a part of political theory teaching community. There are a lot of people who teach political theory. I'm one of them. So I have membership to all these. It's not a formal membership, but
So,
yeah,
can you say you are the male community like that?
main community.
Male.
Male community, no, our community doesn't have a gender.
Okay.
A community doesn't have a gender. You cannot say males and females will be um, different communities. No, no, it doesn't have a.
Sir, one more doubt. All social reformers are also the one individual who changed the ideology of community. Social reformers.
Yes, depends on how much they have changed it. But one thing that nobody tells you, see, that is why I tell you there are a lot of Ambedkarites who say that Ambedkar did this, Ambedkar did that, which are all true. There is no doubt about that. But it is not a totally correct picture that Ambedkar paints. What about the Alvars? Okay, the Alvars who were a part of the Bhakti movement of Ramanujacharya. Now, please forgive me, I can't remember all their names. The first three Alvars are considered to be divinely sent to earth. So they did not have a Varna. I'm not going to use the word caste. You either say Varna or you say Jati. Okay? You either say Varna or you say Jati. They had no Varna because they were divinely sent, divinely created, if you like. And then you have three uh, people, three Alvars who are Brahmins. The rest are not Brahmins. The rest are not any upper caste. The most famous among all Alvars is Nammalvar, and Nammalvar apparently belonged to an untouchable caste, but he's been an Alvar. a religious guru. And apart from that, Nammalvar was not very educated, so he couldn't write. So who documented his works? The Alvar who came before him, Madhura Kavi Alvar. Madhura Kavi Alvar was a Brahmin who documented the works of Nammalvar. There are no works of Madhura Kavi Alvar, none of his own. All the works that have been documented by Madhura Kavi Alvar are those of Nammalvar. Why, if you take sages, Durvasa and Agastya, these were not Brahmins. Yes, Mr. Puneet Akshay.
Sir, do Alvars are devotees of Vishnu or Shiva?
Vishnu.
Vishnu. Okay, sir.
Yes. The devotees of Shiva, the bhakti movement of the Shaivites, they are called Nayanars.
Yes, sir.
They are called Nayanars and there are 64 of them.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
The,
all are Tamilians, no, sir?
no,
Tamil. No,
no.
Alvar is the name.
Alvars mostly are Tamilians. Yes, but not all of them. Uh, Madhurakavi, I think, was a Telugu. And um, among the Nayanars, it's mainly Kannadigas. Among the Nayanars, it is mainly Kannadigas. The Bhakti movement was, and if you take Basava, who was a part of the Bhakti movement, um, Basava was a Brahmin who gave up his Brahmanism, who didn't want people to go to temples. He talked about the Ishtalinga that you have to wear on yourself, and Shiva is always with you. He didn't believe in temples, even though he was educated in a temple. So you have so many of these instances. So many of these instances, not in the new India, not in the post independence India, not in the social reformed India, starting from Raja Ram Mohan Roy, which the Bengalis claim was the first great social reformer. Nonsense. Social reform has been a long process. It's been there as long as this country has existed, as long as this geography has existed. And it is, I feel terrible. I feel very, very sad when people come and tell me BCs are called Bahujans. Hmm? BCs are called Bahujans. That defeats the very purpose of the Satya Shodhak Samaj. That was Jyoti Rao Phule's. Jyoti Rao Phule's Satya Shodhak Samaj set aside the fact that he didn't want independence and all. Just put that one aside. But let's go by what he wanted. He wanted everybody to be treated equally. So Bahujan meant all people. Bahu is all. Bahujan is all people. Bahujan Samaj, an inclusive society. And now what are you saying? Somewhere in the 1990s, a list of BCs in the name, in the guise of other backward classes, it's not other backward classes, It should be called BC, backward castes. Whether they are backward or not is another question again. You have created this, and the caste to which Phule belonged was added to the list of the backward castes in Maharashtra. So, since he talked about Bahujans, our ill-educated people say Bahujans are BCs. Dalits are a creation of Ambedkar, and therefore they are SCs. These wonderful scholars do not even know that the word Dalit was not the creation of Ambedkar. They do not even know that it is not the creation of Ambedkar. He was not the first person to use it. The first person to use it was Jyotirao Phule. Jyotirao Phule used that term, Dalit. Hmm? So, see how learned our people are. People who give long speeches about oppression. You're telling the same story again and again and again with all the inadequacies, falsities, with all the lacunae in it. You're telling the same story again for personal benefit. That's what it is. Anyway, so the individual is not a creation of the community. An individual is somebody who can change the nature of a community. So again, does an individual owe his identity? Not really. So I was trying to tell you that you can have multiple identities. Okay, at one level, I am a teacher. At another level, I am a political science teacher. At the third level, I am a teacher of political science in Osmania University. So Osmania University teacher. So I have purely on my profession, I have 3 or 4 communities of which I'm a member. Which of these communities has created me? Not to talk about my community by birth, the caste community, the community of one caste of people who come together. I'm not a product of that. I don't agree with it. So we don't owe our allegiance to the community. Because if one community rejects you, if tomorrow, because I don't follow my caste community and my caste community will excommunicate me, is that the end of my life? No, I can continue to live. But in case I feel the necessity to be part of some kind of a community that will be there to help me, I'll go become a Christian. I'll go become a Christian. I'll go become a Muslim. That's what I meant by communities are not airtight, that people inside can't go out and outside can't come in. By definition, a community is loose. It is not tight. It is loose. You can choose to leave a community or you can choose to join a community. Our individual choices framed in the context of a community? No. I yesterday told you this in great detail, how my entire family has made choices uh, which are, you know, framed against the community that we belong to. So obviously, they're not done in the context of a community. They're done in the context of the world. The world is a very big place. And even at times when there was no great technology, news went from one place to another. Otherwise, how is it that in the early modern period, European merchants came to India and to China? How did they come? Why did they come? They came because these were prosperous countries from where they could buy things, take them and sell them back in their own countries. So I gave you the story of Marco Polo and pasta, spaghetti specifically, and a bit of macaroni, right? So, no, it doesn't work like that. Should an individual think, this is the next question, should an individual think of himself or herself as not having rights against a community that they belong to? No, not at all. If you don't agree with something, if you don't agree with something, you needn't do that thing that the community wants you to do. You needn't do that. You really needn't do that. You have a right to fight against your community. The reason why I am a supporter of fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution, one of the biggest reasons why I am a supporter of that is because they are individual based, which means that you can escape the tyranny of a community. If you say rights are to be given on the basis of communities to which you belong, then it is like in the medieval Europe, it's like the church telling you what to do, what not to do. It is like the feudal professional guild saying that you have to do this only and not something else. Or if you read that translation of that Kannada novel Samskara, the fact that a Brahmin chooses to live with a concubine who's a prostitute, dies, and no Brahmin wants to touch him because he's polluted. And so what happens? They're all sitting and twiddling their thumbs. And as per the rules of Brahmanism, the Agrahara, as it is called, where the Brahmins live, you cannot cook in the Agrahara if a body is there. Until the body has been taken away for its last rites, Nobody can cook. You can't even drink water. That's an amazing book. Try to get a copy of it and read it.
Sir, is it written by Girish Karnad?
No, not written by Girish Karnad. He made it into a movie for which he wrote the screenplay, I think. I forget the name of the writer. I Not a very well-known name. I don't know, for some strange reason, Raja Rao keeps coming, but it's not Raja Rao. Raja Rao wrote Kantapura, not Samskara. And Raja Rao wrote in English. This was written in Kannada. The original is in Kannada. I have that book somewhere, but I told you I have now stacked them and locked them away, so they're not available to me to go and check on. And anyway, so let's not dwell too much on these things. So people have a right to make, uh, right to rebel against their community and still say, I'm a part of the community. You don't have to leave the community. You don't have to leave the community. You can rebel against the community and still claim your membership to the community. So the individual has rights against the community. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And he doesn't have to leave the community to exercise those rights. Is a community supposed to denote small spaces and places like villages, mohallas, I said yesterday, neighborhoods? Are they communities? Yes, they are. Our face-to-face relationship within a village, within a particular neighborhood, do they form a community? Most certainly, yes. But they don't have to be only villages. Communities can be larger. Communities can be much, much larger because people move. People don't sit at one place. People move, people travel. So your communities are pretty big. They are wide, deep, all those things that you can think of. Is the community a work of civil society? I told you that this is a completely nonsensical thing to even discuss because there has been no consistent understanding of civil society, though it does seem that the communitarians and particularly Will Kimlicka have been informed by Antonio Gramsci's. Among the communitarians, I'm actually singling out Michael Sandel, who talks about communities, and what he's actually doing is not spelling out the fact that these are church-going communities. He's not spelling that out. That is what Gramsci called a civil society. He said church-going communities are civil societies. And I said Gramsci is not a Marxist. There are influences of Marx on him, but he's not a Marxist. Right? So that is one answer. It's not a creation of a civil society because so many people have talked. For Hegel, civil society is bureaucracy. For Marx, civil society is the bourgeois class of people getting together. For John Locke, civil society is the society of the rational, whose rationality has been determined by the amount of property that they have. For Rousseau, civil society is a corrupt body. And today, when we talk about civil society and civil society groups, we are talking about non-governmental organizations working in the development sector. So the community is not a creation of the civil society in any sense of the term. That is complete rubbish that should be gotten rid of. Nothing to do with civil society. And I told you, John Donne is somebody who talks about a community. Does it denote a natural entity? Does it denote a natural entity? And what are the examples that he says are the ones that are natural entities? For him, nation states are natural entities. Fiji, these are the examples he gives. Fiji is a small nation state. The United States of America is a huge nation state. Singapore is a tightly held, tightly governed city state. So it's actually more about state than about nation or city. And then you have the Commonwealth of Independent States, which I'm sure you don't even know exists. After the Soviet Union split into 16 countries, and after that, when the rest of Europe, Eastern Europe, also split, and Yugoslavia split into 5 countries, Czechoslovakia split into 2 countries. All these said we are Commonwealth of Independent States. That's a loose nation state. Is that a nation state at all? Is that a state at all? It's not. It's none of those things. So that is a completely nonsensical question to ask. And I'm surprised that an accomplished scholar like John Donne, a very accomplished scholar of political theory, actually managed to ask such a stupid question. The next question is there just one community? It is actually a bit of a repetition of what John Donne himself has said. Is there this thing, one particular community which constitutes one nation? And I told you that this is something that comes up in the case of Europe, where the nation state system took its birth. Whenever it was convenient, they said language. Whenever it was convenient, they said something else, race, Caucasians. So ultimately, nation states are not born based in communities. They are based in the exigencies of capitalism, is what I had told you. And well, today we went a little astray in the morning, uh, but tomorrow let's wind up with Hobbes and um, the one and get on to capitalism, the second phase of it. We started talking about the first phase of it. We'll have to go to the second phase of it and then talk about John Locke. I told you that that particular unit is a bit of a thorny unit because it raises a number of different kinds of questions, which if I don't bring you face to face with, then everything will look, it's all so simple. It isn't. Please believe me, it isn't. So the question, the next question is, uh, are communities not bigger than states? The answer is, of course not. Communities are bigger than states. If you say there's a Christian community, the Christian community is spread over so many different states. If you say the Muslim community, then that is spread over so many different states. But put religions aside, political science teachers community is bigger than a state. It's far, far bigger than the states. Oh, because there are people teaching political science and people know each other. Mind you, when I said as a 20-year-old, I met Charles Taylor, Alasdair MacIntyre, David McClellan. These were not the times of social networking. These were not the times of email. There might have been email of the variety that I talked to you about, which is a networking of computers and not the World Wide Web. And let me finish that point. I should have finished it yesterday. The difference between the internet and the World Wide Web. I think Bill Gates has a good way of explaining a few things. When somebody asked him what is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web, he said, consider the internet to be the truck and consider the World Wide Web to be the cargo that is being carried in the truck. I think that's a very good answer. And he was once also asked, what is software? What is hardware? How do you distinguish between these two? He said, the hardware is the brain, the software is the mind. Again, I think a brilliant answer. Personally, I think these two are very, very intelligent answers by Bill Gates. I feel very sorry for him. Melinda is taking away half of his property or more than that. Poor fellow is no longer going to figure in the first 10 richest people. If Melinda Gates can find another rich tycoon and marry him, she'll be in the list. Poor Bill won't be. In the West, these people are called bounty hunters. One lady, I forget her name, did Paul McCartney, the rock star. She almost left him for broke. Anyway, so the answer to the question that are communities bigger than states? Yes, they are much bigger than states. They can be, they needn't be. There is no rule that they have to be bigger, or they have to be the same size, or they have to be smaller. That's all because the community is a fluidic body. If an individual is the product of a community, is the heritage of that community uh, what becomes the heritage of that individual? Or is there a bigger heritage of language, of literature, and civilization itself? Can they be considered to be the heritages of people in a community? Here, you don't even have to invoke a community. As the human race, as the human race, we all celebrate the achievements of various individuals wherever they may be. Wherever they may be, great painters, great musicians, great scientists. Will you say that I don't believe in physics at all because Einstein didn't belong to our nation, or because Newton didn't belong to our nation, or Galileo before him didn't belong to our nation? Are we going to sit and say that these people are not a part of our heritage, the heritage of the humankind? I take pride in people like Rabindranath Tagore, particularly Rabindranath Tagore, and in Jawaharlal Nehru, who were firm believers that a nation state should only be a passing phenomenon. Ultimately, we should all become members of one particular world. And I sent some of you a song. And that song, there is a beautiful line there. There's so many different worlds, so many different suns, but we have just one world, but we live in different ones. So I believe in cosmopolitanism. I believe in humanity. I believe in the human race. I celebrate Fyodor Dostoevsky's writings as much as I would celebrate the writings of Gurujada Parao. I will celebrate Munshi Premchand's writings as much as I celebrate Mark Twain. I celebrate Nietzsche's humanism, just as I celebrate Gandhi's non-violence and satyagraha, ahimsa and satyagraha. These are all world heritages. You don't tie them down to. And let me complete that song. Now the sun's gone to hell, the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die. But it's written in the starlight, and every line in your palm, that we are fools to wage war on our brothers in arms. So the world can live as one community. I'm not a big I'm not a big fan of this kind of fractured communities that are advocated by people. Liberalism, for all its other weaknesses, its greatness lies in the fact that it opens up the possibility of a world community. It really does. Marx didn't believe in nation states. Marx believed in workers of the world unite. Marx's cause was a global cause. That's what made him such a great man. And I'm not a Marxist. So, what does Waldron say then? If we say that all these are not at all meaningful propositions, meaningful questions, what does he say? I told you, he quotes Rushdie, Salman Rushdie, of all people. So let me quote Salman Rushdie verbatim, as quoted Salman Rushdie, as quoted by Jeremy Waldron. There are about 4 lines in this. The first 2 lines were from his first book, Salman Rushdie's first book, Midnight's Children. I identified with that because I was also born somewhere in midnight. And that book begins with these lines. I was born in the night. I was born in the middle of the night, an Indian, and more specifically, a Bombayite. A city which is, by its very nature, cosmopolitan, right? These lines, Jeremy Waldron took. And then he took other lines, which Salman Rushdie wrote, if you like, commemorating his 1,000 days in hiding from the Muslims who were trying to kill him for having written the book, the Satanic Verses. satanic verses. Sorry. So, what does he say in that? He rewrites this again. I was born in the middle of the night, an Indian, a Bombayite, a city which is cosmopolitan, a home to so many different cultures. Now I am mongrelized. Now I am mongrelized because I have tried to hide in various different countries before finding a refuge in the UK. I lived with a Hindu woman, Padma Lakshmi, who has left me and gone, but I remain who I am. English is not my mother tongue, yet I write in that language. That is the only language I can write. So I am this globalized mongrel. These are the lines that were quoted by Jeremy Waldron. Mongrel. Do you know what a mongrel is? Anyone?
Mungi, sir.
Hmm? That is mongoose.
Mongoose, sorry, sir.
Not mongrel. A mongrel is your street dog. You must be seeing them in the background, no? There are two dogs in my house. We call them indies. I say that and there's one. Yeah. We call them indies, but they're actually mongrels. There are several breeds that have got into them. The two dogs that I have are from the same litter, from the same mother, but they are so different to look at. So that's a mongrel. So he calls himself a mongrelized person, Rushdie. And Waldron borrows on that, and he says cosmopolitanism. Here is the mongrel. He's come for his petting again. Every once in a while I have to pet. He says, I rejoice in the mongrelizations and fear. Okay, he says, I rejoice in the cosmopolitanism and mongrelization, and I fear the absolute and the pure. That is what Waldron says. I rejoice in the cosmopolitanism and the mongrelization and fear the absolute and the pure. I like melanges, hodgepodges, bits and pieces of culture that create a newness and demonstrate how newness enters the world. How newness enters the world. It is the great possibilities of migrations right across the world, and I have embraced it. And he also says Rushdie is a migrant. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a perennial refugee because he was always traveling to various parts of the world. He became a Protestant, then he was made a Catholic, then he became a Protestant again. A perennial refugee. And me, not me, Jeremy Waldron, the frequent flyer who spends time in an aeroplane traveling with a community of people who constitute all kinds of nationalities. So that is hybridity. That is hybridity. The adoption of various different and humanitarian identities, all those in conjunction with cosmopolitanism. Yet you don't have to leave a community. Just see yourself, see your community as a part of the world, and that is hybridity. So Jeremy Waldron calls himself a mongrel, just like Rushdie called himself a mongrel, and they are proud of that identity of being mongrels. At one place in one of his essays, he says, "What do I say to a New Zealander who ended up there from England, went to Heidelberg in Germany to study, and now teaches in the University of Minnesota? What do I call this person?" He calls him a cosmopolitan hybrid. So that's enough, I think, unless you have questions. Waldron's wisdom comes from the fact that he's also somebody who is into jurisprudence. Having taught courses in law, I can tell you that jurisprudence itself is a fascinating subject. It's very dry, it is extremely dense, but if you're able to crack it, then it opens up so many possibilities of your mind working extremely, extremely well. That's what it does, jurisprudence. And when I discuss Will Kimlicka with you tomorrow, that'll be the last class on multiculturalism. When I discuss Will Kimlicka, I'll quote Brian Barry. Brian Barry was also a student of jurisprudence. He was, in fact, directly a student under MLA Hart at the University of Oxford. And he's a very, very trenchant critic of Will Kimlicka. So I'll discuss Brian Barry, his criticism of Kimlicka, and why we in India should be ultra careful with this multicultural theories, because routinely our academicians recycle what is produced in the West. But what we don't realize while recycling is that some of these can potentially cause great harm. They can cause great harm to the nation and to humanity itself. So, any questions?
Uh, so one question.
Yep.
How can we distinguish between multiculturalism and hybridity?
See,
The-
multiculturalism is basically trying to break people up into smaller communities, tying people to community identities. It'll become clearer to you tomorrow. Today, I have only discussed more communitarianism, but multiculturalism is also communitarianism. What it does is it ties you down to a community. Will Kimlicka talks about nations within nations. He talks about what he calls a nation of minorities in a larger nation. Sometimes he calls that a national minority. He says they deserve special treatment. Then he's categorizing different kinds of communities, asking that they all be treated. He's talking about the Quebecois, as they're called, the original inhabitants of Quebec in Canada, the Maoris of New Zealand, and he's talking about the Aborigines of Australia. He talks about ethnicities. And I want to counter that particular argument by telling you, and he makes a separate case of African Americans. I want to counter that by telling you that, and I'm very proud to say that, an Indian sociologist, not by origin, but he's worked here all his life, Andre Bataille, a Frenchman, he says there are no ethnicities left in this world. So the whole idea of ethnic cultures, ethnic communities, he says those are all useless expressions. They don't serve any purpose because there is no ethnicity. He says it can be used in everyday language by people to denote various things. You see clothes from Rajasthan and say, this is nice ethnic chic. Ethnic chic as an ethnic fashion. The bright red, yellow. That way, maybe it's okay. But to say that people are ethnically different is basically saying that we carry different DNAs, which we don't. We don't. The structure of our DNA is now uniform. So it's not an opinion, it's a scientifically proven fact. Though Andre Bataille does say that possibly the Aborigines and the people of Andaman that nobody knows about because they are fenced off, they don't have a system of medicine apparently. So if some kind of a pandemic like this goes there, then they don't have a system of medicine to recover. So some of the Andamanese tribes who are supposed to be related to the pygmies of Africa, they have been cordoned off. Nobody goes anywhere near them, 10 kilometers around them. In fact, one journalist one day said, what if they've already died? If that whole thing, you're thinking you're protecting them, but maybe they're all gone already. But I think it's better to err on the side of caution. What if they're alive? If they're alive and they're living, fine. Let them be. If they're gone, they're gone. At least people won't go and build flats there. That's a good side of it. As long as you're keeping that as a place out of bounds for human beings. Yeah. Did I answer your question or did I digress?
But the term multiculturalism is giving a positive meaning, no, sir? That all cultures living together and stuff like that.
No, it is when you hear Brian Barry's argument, you tell me if that is a positive thing.
Okay. But this
Hmm?
is the general notion, what we think if we listen to the term, right?
Because multiculturalism, does it promote one humanity? Consider that question. Does it? Does it consider equality?
Mm.
Does it consider equality? Christians saying that our religion is superior to the pagans as the cosmological, not religions, cosmologies like Sanatana Dharma, the Egyptian cosmologies, the ancient Egyptian cosmologies, and the present day cosmologies of the Africans, all those are treated as, I was very surprised when a black African student of mine, when I was teaching law, and I said, what about people who are not either Christian or Muslim? And he says they don't have a religion. So I said, okay, so then what about that? He says, well, they'll go to Jahannam. Jahannam is hell. So just because you're saying multicultural, that conjugation in itself doesn't convey anything specifically. It need not be seen as positive. It need not be seen as negative. The conjugation. of multi and cultural. But if you explore the concept, then it'll become clear. I have only explored communitarianist, and you've seen the difficulties. That is one dimension of multiculturalism. Now, if you extend this communitarianism to the whole idea of cultural communitarianism, let's see what that shows. Let's
Yes,
wait.
sir.
Let's wait for tomorrow.
Yes.
Let's see. You hear what Kimlika says, then you hear what Brian Barry says, and you'll get a pretty good idea.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Vishnu Priya has said thank you and she's left, I think.
Bye.
Vishnu Priya, have you left? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's okay. All right. Okay then. Thank you. So see you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Right off. See you tomorrow morning and in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.